Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander Score Studio. Welcome to the show. So, okay, here is a card that might not, I mean, it does seem like a lot at first, but it also is one that over the past couple of years, if this was printed, say, 5-6 years ago, it'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's pretty good. Nothing that's just like over the top, but that's pretty good. But these days, with certain changes that have happened in Magic and a certain, well, artifact token that has become incredibly popular and one of the most popular kinds of decks out there in Commander now, yeah, Tarrian's Soulcleaver is going to be absolutely a card that is going to take players out left and right in Commander games. Now, it's not for every deck out there, but let's just jump into it. It's an equipment, legendary artifact equipment, I should say, for 1 mana. Equip creature has vigilance. That's already a great, like, low to the ground effect right there. Yeah, giving a creature vigilance, that's nice. That's nice, right? But more importantly, whenever another artifact or creature is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you get a counter on equipped creature, and it's got an equip 2 cost. So, yeah, this is, well, again, something that years and years ago would have been like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, I mean, you get, like, a lot of creatures hitting graveyards, but you usually don't have a lot of artifacts hitting graveyards. There's this little thing called treasures that have kind of taken over Commander in a lot of ways, and a lot of decks are either built around treasures, have a lot of treasures generating effects, and now all of a sudden, not only when creatures, any creature on the battlefield, whether it's token or non-token, hits the graveyard, cool, because yes, tokens hold the graveyard technically and then leave, whatever, anyways. Cool, you get counters on it, but also, yeah, artifacts. And typically, again, yeah, I mean, there's artifact removal, and there's like regular artifacts when they get dealt with, and maybe someone Vandal Blast, cool, but more likely nowadays, it's going to be like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. I make like 10 treasures. I sacrifice them. My creature gets +1/+1 for each of those treasures that were sacrificed. Oh, and if you guys sacrifice treasures or clues or food or blood tokens or map tokens or whatever kind of artifact tokens there are, which again, there's a ton of ways to generate a lot of tokens. Certain decks, you know, revolve completely around that. Yeah, this creature's can become absolutely massive. So again, this is a low to the ground piece of equipment that already provides value. Again, even just equipping it on a creature provides value with that vigilance. It's, again, just what, 3 mana in total to get it out and then equip. Give vigilance. Yeah, now is that overcosted? Sure, but the potential for, again, an absurd power spike is huge. And again, this kind of allows you to do some combat tricks with it in a way because, again, if you have those artifact tokens that can just be sacrificed regularly, like treasures, which can be sacrificed for free, hey, yeah, I swing at you, cool, I've got like 5 treasures ready, and yeah, you gonna block? How you gonna block? Trying to decide how to block with this is going to be problematic. And again, speaking of blocking, the creature that is swinging with this, again, can just stay back. Because again, it has vigilance, so you can swing, be massive, hit your opponents for a lot, and also keep it back for defense as well, while potentially growing even more throughout the game, throughout those turns, because creatures are going to get dealt with, artifacts get dealt with, artifacts get sacrificed like treasures. Yeah, again, this is a card that I can see seeing play, of course, in Voltron strategies out there, but also in treasure strategies, also in, I mean, potentially legendary tribal decks as well, again, say legendary artifact, in artifact decks as well, and then, yeah, maybe in aristocrat decks too, because, again, hey, sacrificing creatures, sacrificing artifacts, already a very powerful thing for certain decks out there, and this just like, hey, you know what? Black Blade Forge can do a lot of work for certain decks, but this can also do even more work in a way. So yeah, a very, very cool card. One that I think, again, years ago, 5-6 years ago, when treasures weren't a big thing at all. I mean, I guess, when did treasures really start? Was that original Ixalan? I mean, it was okay, but now it's like, oh yeah, treasures get sacrificed left and right. I mean, just play a game of Commander and just kind of just count how many times creatures or artifacts hit the graveyard, especially treasures and those kinds. It's going to happen a lot. That creature can become massive. Let's jump into some cards that, well, talk about the synergies of this. Let's talk about some commanders and then get some strategies that might want to consider this one. So again, let's start things off with, well, Smothering Tithe, which I actually didn't realize is $14 right now, which is the lowest I've ever seen it at. I mean, I guess when it started, it might have been lower than that, but barely. And then, yeah, no, it's been up to like $40 at some points. With the reprint, though, This card obviously kind of defines the OP nature of treasures in a way. Enchantment for 4 mana. Whenever an opponent, 3 and a white. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create treasure token. Obviously, tap sacrifice for mana. Basically, yeah, an insane mana source for you. 2 mana is a huge taxing effect. Many players don't pay it, and that player ends up with an absurd amount of treasures. Obviously, again, if that's you, cool. Obviously, that pairs incredibly well with the Soulcleaver, and yeah, you're going to sacrifice those treasures whenever you need to. Again, if it's your opponent, now you get a benefit whenever they're sacrificing their treasures. So if they are, casting spells with them, they're like, oh, I need mana, but the more treasures I sacrifice, that creature just becomes more and more massive. So yeah, definitely a consideration there. Moving on, we've got Ashnod's Altar. Again, when it comes to sacrificing creatures, again, there's entire decks built around sacrificing creatures. Getting creatures in play, sacrifice them for value, especially a free sacrifice outlet like this one. Sacrifice creature, add colorless, 2 mana essentially. Yeah, I mean, again, if you're playing against a deck that is, maybe aristocrat style strategy that sacrifices creatures, great. If you're playing with a deck that wants to sacrifice it, again, with this kind of, instant speed, whenever you want, just sacrifice creature fodder. Again, that can be a problematic block for your opponents, being like, oh, okay, yeah, they're swinging at me, and they can sacrifice their creatures whenever they want, and I don't know how to block that. So, yeah, it can definitely be pretty problematic. And again, on defense, because again, the creature has vigilance, that even makes it so that your opponents might not want to attack you either, because they don't know how to attack you when you can just sacrifice creatures willy-nilly, and then all of a sudden, block in an unexpected way. Moving on, Ruinous Ultimatum, just another one I want to really point out. This can be a game-ending play. I mean, it already is kind of a game-ending play in some ways, but it can be really a game-ending play in combination with the Soulcleaver. I'm not going to read that mana cost. 7 mana of a lot of colors. Mardu colors. Sorcery. Destroy all non-land permanents your opponents control. So, again, this takes care of, everything they control. This is a one-sided, yes, Sorcerer Seed board wipe, but again, unlike Cyclonic Rift, you are destroying them. So, yeah, let's take out all those artifacts, all those creatures, all the things, and all of a sudden, again, let's say there were 30 artifacts and creatures in play that your opponents controlled. All of a sudden, those are all dealt with, and that's 30 counters on a creature. Way more than enough to take out basically any opponent, especially if it's on your commander, obviously. You can turn basically any commander can turn into a one-shot KO with this, as long as the commander doesn't have defender and can attack. There you go. But yeah, this card, again, years ago might not have been as good. It might have depended on something like a Ruinous Ultimatum to take out all those, mana rocks or, artifacts that are in play. But these days, again, because of just how ubiquitous, treasures have become and other kinds of artifact tokens have become, it has a lot more potential, and again, can definitely see a good amount of play. So next up, let's talk about some commanders that might want to consider a card like this. Depending on your build for Teysa Karlov, yeah, an aristocrat style strategy, you could definitely consider this one, because again, like I mentioned, you're going to want to sacrifice creatures and maybe even artifacts anyways, and now when you're doing so, you're also growing a creature, and also that creature might have, well, vigilance already, which is nice, but also lifelink. 2/4 Human Advisor for 4 mana and Orzhov. If a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers initial time. Creature tokens you control have vigilance and lifelink. So with the Soulcleaver, now all of a sudden when any creature dies, now that's 2 counters instead of just 1. So again, yeah, you can turn creatures into absolutely monstrous threats in absolutely no time. Speaking of which, Korvold didn't need any more help, really, but hey, Korvold, have a shiny new toy. 4/4 Dragon Noble, 4/5 Injund, flying, enters the battlefield, or attack, sacrifice another permanent. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, you get a counter on Korvold and draw a card. Now, all of a sudden, again, yeah, again, many Korvold decks are built around a lot of treasures, also sacrificing other permanents too, but hey, get those treasures in play, sacrifice them, get a counter on Korvold, draw a card. Oh, by the way, also, when you've got the equipment on this, you get another counter, get an extra counter. You're basically doubling up those counters whenever you're sacrificing artifacts or creatures for Korvold, turning Korvold into a one-shot KO in absolutely no time at all. Again, Korvold already an OP commander in many ways. Sure, slap this in the deck for fun. Next up, Bray Ethereum Shaper. A 4/4 Ledger Artifact Human for 4 mana, white, blue, black, and red. Enters the battlefield to get 2 Thopters. Pay 2, sacrifice 2 artifacts, choose 1/3, and trigger player Planeswalker. Target creature -4/-4, you gain 5 life. Here's the thing, again, with this, just by paying that 2 mana, sacrificing those Thopters or whatnot, again, you're in a Bray deck, you already want to sacrifice certain artifacts that maybe have some death triggers or some benefits. Cool, sacrifice 2 artifacts, that's 2 counters on whatever creature it's equipped to, so maybe even Breya. And then also, sure, if you maybe take out a creature that -4/-4, that's a 3rd counter as well. So again, Breya has a lot of utility and a lot of different sacrifice effects. So yeah, definitely a commander that could consider a new artifact like this one. Next up, Rafik of the Many. Voltron commanders, of course. A 3/3 Human Knight for 1 in Bant colors, Exalted. Whenever a creature control attacks alone against double strike until end of turn. Again, this takes absolutely no time to turn Rafik into a one-shot KO. And again, that vigilance can be really important for Rafik because, yeah, you want Rafik back for, blocking as well most of the time. So you get a couple of counters on Rafik, one-shot KO, keep it back for blocking, and it's going to be a massive threat. Of course, you've got other pieces of equipment, too, to make Rafik even deadlier. Probably like, Death Touch, Trample, Lifelink, all the fun things that are only going to benefit from more and more counters from the Soulcleaver. And finally, in the most gross way to describe how this card can just be disgusting, Shalai and Halar. Yeah, +1 counter build. So again, we talked about aristocrats, we've talked about Voltron, we've talked about artifacts, we've talked about a lot of different strategies essentially, and counters is definitely another home for it as well. Shalai and Halar, a 3/3 angel elf for 4 mana, essentially in Naya, flying and vigilance. Whenever one or more counters are put on a creature control, Shalai and Halar deals that much damage to an opponent. Death by 1,000 cuts with this brand new one, because now anytime a creature dies or an artifact's in the graveyard or whatnot, hey, you know what's gonna happen? I'm basically just gonna Blood Artist you down. I mean, you don't gain the life, but just ping, 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 because you are getting this on Shalai and Halar or another creature. You're getting a counter on that creature, and all of a sudden, you are pinging down your opponents. And of course, yeah, there's also infinite combos with Shalai and Halar. There's also, well, ways that you can really, really, really take advantage of this with lifelink. But yes, counter builds, again, also have, ways to double up the counters, ways to get even more counters. Yeah, it is absolutely a card that can see play in a good amount of decks out there, depending on the strategy. And I'd even mention legendary tribal decks out there, because again, this is a low to the ground legendary artifact that can definitely come in handy. Again, like a Sisay Weatherlight Captain deck, like, okay, I'll just tutor that out right away. Get that into play, attached to my commander. My commander's vigilant now, cool, I can swing away with it. And also my commander can grow throughout the game, making it so I can tutor even more things. So, a lot of potential for this one. So yeah, overall, a card that, well, again, a couple years ago, might not have seemed like all that much. Like, okay, cool, yeah, I mean, artifacts get dealt with every now and then. But yeah, I mean, like, creatures, yeah, okay, I mean, I can see that seeing some play, but there's some better cards out there. But then now it's like, okay, no, again, just in a regular commander game, just count how many times, like, artifacts hit the graveyard. Just how many treasures were made in the game, how many times were they sacrificed, how many times were other artifacts created, again, like clues, food, blood tokens, etc., etc., etc. How many times did they hit the graveyard? And, yeah, again, on top of all the creatures, on top of all the artifacts getting dealt with, this has a good amount of potential, again, for a decent amount of kinds of decks out there, and ones that are incredibly popular. Again, Aristocrats is up there, +1 counters are up there, artifacts are up there. Voltron, maybe not as up there, but still, there's a lot of kinds of decks out there that can consider this one. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on it, and yeah, make sure you're staying tuned to this channel for more exciting quick takes and spoilers. Of course, as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.